Minister. Is the Prime Minister aware of recent comments suggesting
order, the House will come to order.
Is the Prime Minister aware of recent comments suggesting that the 1950s were a time of great advancement for Australia, a golden age for Australia? Can the Prime Minister tell the House whether it's the government's intention to pursue similar outcomes?
The Honourable the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the last week we've had one of those rare philosophic outbursts from the opposition. And we had some remarks by the Leader of the Opposition and the member for Bennelong at a philosophical level which couldn't have made the differences between the government and the opposition clearer than they did. They started off, of course, with the Leader of the Opposition, with his back turned as usual, talking about, "I never learned respect at school. I never learned respect at school. I never learned respect at school. You see, I should never have said in front of Her Majesty, the Queen of Australia, that Australia was now trading with the Asia-Pacific area. I should never have said that we have independence from Britain and Europe, as Europe joined the common market and as Australia trades now 70 to 80% of its imports and export with the Asia-Pacific area, that remark, that independence to the Queen of Australia, the Queen of this country, of this continent, that I should have had more respect. How dare I even reflect modestly on the old links with Britain, on the British bootstrap stuff. And then, of course, we had then a flurry of comment by the member for Bennelong about the 50s, what a very good period it was. A very, very good period, he said. A golden age. Now, this is the period, Mr. Speaker, when GDP per head was half what it was now, when commodities occupied 85% of our exports, when telephones were half what they were now, when there are half as many cars per 1,000 people of population, where pensions are half their real value of today, when there were 10 children per 1,000 going to universities instead of 30. This was the golden age. This was the golden age, of course, when Australia stagnated. This was the golden age when it was injected with a near-lethal dose of fogeyism by the Conservative parties opposite, when they put the country into neutral and where we very gently ground to a halt in nowhere land of the early 1980s, with a dependency on commodities that wouldn't pay for our imports. This is the golden age. This is the golden age when vast numbers of Australians never got a look in, that the women who didn't get a look in and had no equal rights and no equal pay, where migrants were factory fodder, where Aborigines were excluded from the system, where we had these xenophobes running around about Britain and bootstraps, and that awful cultural cringe under Menzies which held us back for nearly a generation. That awful cultural cringe. Well, Mr. Speaker, I said today at the Press Club that one of my colleagues, the Minister for Administrative Services, Senator Bolkus, has always been at the Cabinet about the future development of the old Parliament House and about whether it ought to be a constitutional or museum of Australian cultural history. And we thought we could basically make the changes, put some of the cultural icons of the 50s down there. The Morphy Richards toaster, the Qualcast mower, a pair of heavily protected slippers, the Astor TV, the AWA radiogram, and of course John Hewson, the member for Wentworth, and the member for Bennelong. You could go there as well. And when the kids come and look at them and they'll say, "Gee, Mum, is that what it was like then?" And the two Johns can say, no kids, this is the future. This is the future. And there they are. This is the future. Back down the time tunnel to the future. There they are. Now, the fact is, you see, I tell you this. When I was told about I didn't learn respect at school, I tell you I learned one thing. I learned about self-respect and self-regard for Australia. Not about some cultural cringe to a country which decided not to defend the Malaysian Peninsula, not to worry about Singapore, not to give us our troops back to keep ourselves free from Japanese domination. This was the country This was the country that you people wedded yourself to, and even as they walked out on you and joined the common market, you were still looking for your MBEs and your knighthoods and all the rest of the regalia that come with it. You would take Australia right back down the time tunnel to the cultural cringe where you've always come from. And that's why your Fight Back document has exactly...
Order! There is far too much noise. Order! Members on my left, the member for Dundas will cease interjecting. I think the member for Bennelong is going to have a heart attack if his face goes any redder, so he might cease interjecting too.
Mr. Speaker,
and members on my right will cease interjecting as well.
The same old fogies who doff their lid and tug the forelock to the British establishment, who now try and grind down Australian kids by denying them a technical school education, that want to put a tax on the back of the poor, the same old sterile ideology that's going to produce Fight Back, that produced the Thatcherite policies of the late 1970s, the same old fogeyism of the 1950s. We won't have a bar of it. You can go back to your 50s, to your nostalgia, to your Menzies, the Caseys and the whole lot. They were not aggressively Australian, they were not aggressively proud of our culture, and we'll have no bar of you or your sterile ideology.
Order! The House will come to order.